Hello and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Serge. Joining him as always, I have Jared and Liam, and today we have a special guest. This is Allison. Reminder that the podcast is brought to you with your support over at the Patreon at patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. Thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do this without you. For those of you who are paying attention over the weekend and to the last podcast, we just had the 2017 year-end championship, and it was amazing. We had a great time. Thank you so much for checking it out. We're going to put a link to the YouTube replay in the description below, so definitely check that out. There was some powerful magic. All right. We have our first ever guest on the podcast. I'm really excited to introduce Allison. Allison is a good friend of all of us in the community. She's an L2 Magic judge. For those of you who watched the championship or will watch the championship, check out the link below. She was the head judge for the entire event and did an amazing job. She is also the 2015 local champion, so very high-level player. The Rock aficionado. Anything else you want to add?
I think that you've covered it. Thank you. I'm happy to be on the show.
Yeah, we're super happy to have you. So let's start with the normal intro segment, the best card you're not playing. And up to date, we have Allison. Allison, tell us some secret tech.
So my best card that you're not playing is a card called Miri's Guile. It's 1 mana, green enchantment, and it just says, at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top 3 cards of your library and put them back in any order.
Jerry, you got some feelings on this card. You look like you're trying to hold something back here.
Yep. I'm not the biggest Miri's Guile supporter in the world.
So the way that I look at it is that if you enjoy playing Sensei's Divining Top and you enjoy playing Sylvan Library, which are 2 very good cards in Highlander, this is a 3rd copy for half the price.
It also does neither of the things that those other 2 cards
All right.
do.
I can get behind like part of that, but it's missing 3 key words on the card. Yeah, and that is the 3.
Absolutely, when this card is just in play, it is worse than a Sylvan Library, mostly. But it costs half as much mana in a blue deck. Like in a blue deck, Sensei's Divining Top, the mana activation to spin it is largely irrelevant because you can activate it anytime you have. Blue decks often accidentally find themselves with 3 mana. And Sylvan Library also gets played in combo decks and aggressive decks that are much happier trading their life for cards over a short span in a game. I think that a lot of those decks would not want to play Miri's Guile. If you have access to the additional card filtering of blue, if you're an aggressive deck, Miri's Guile is just too slow for that. But in a slower green-based control deck, for one, having a 3rd copy of Sylvan Library is just worth it, even if that 3rd copy is worse. And for 2, there are so many things that a control deck wants to be doing with its mana on turn 2 that having the option to drop a Miri's Guile on turn 1 and then not put any mana into it for the rest of the game, but benefit from the card selection, which a green deck does not normally have access to, makes it a worthwhile inclusion in those types of decks.
We touched on 2 other cards a lot in the comparison. Liam, do you mind explaining what Sylvan Library and Sensei's Divining Top do?
Sure, yeah. So Sylvan Library is a 1 and a green enchantment that says, it's a really wordy card, and you actually shouldn't read it. But basically, during your draw step, you can draw 2 additional cards.
Okay.
And then you have to keep those separate from your hand. And if you do draw those 2 other cards, you can either pay 4 life and keep them in your hand for each one past the first one. So you're going to draw 3 cards.
You have 3 cards.
And if you keep 2 cards, you pay 4. If you keep 3 cards, you pay 8. Or you can just put 2 of them back on top.
Take 2 of those, put them back over here.
It is relevant that you have to make sure you draw your first card for the turn. That's fine.
Yeah.
But then if you library, you have to make sure that you keep the cards you've drawn this turn separate. One other thing that's kind of interesting is that because of the templating of this card, it says like for each, it says you can put cards drawn this turn back on top of your library. So if you like brainstorm in your upkeep, and then it can get really confusing.
A popular interaction is Ancestral Vision. If
Yeah,
you have an Ancestral
Vision and then you solve it.
Ticks down.
Draw 6 and then take 2 of those 6 not from your hand and put them back.
Yeah.
So I'd like to point out another benefit of Miri's Guile is that I've never had to have a judge call involving it.
I do. Yeah, we have a combined 5 levels of judge right now, and Sylvan Library is one of those nightmare judge cards where, you know, you'll start a legacy tournament and you're like, and if you play Sylvan Library and Chains of Mephistopheles, just leave. You know, that's your player meeting typically.
You've never had anyone try to play Miri's Guile like Sylvan Library?
Ooh.
I've never had anyone play Miri's Guile.
I played Mirror's
fair
Call.
enough.
All right, and what
It's
Sensei's
the best card you're not playing.
Ah, there you go, fair.
And then, so Sensei's Divining Top is a 1-mana artifact that says 1 mana, pay 1 mana, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order, much like Miri's Guile. But then also, you can tap this card, you can tap Sensei's Divining Top to draw a card, comma, then put Sensei's Divining Top on top of your library. So this is kind of interesting because it basically makes Sensei's Divining Top impossible to kill. Which is kind of interesting. Allison, I had a question for you because you obviously play Sylvan Library and Sensei's Divining Top as well. Do you ever find there's like diminishing returns on drawing more than one? Like if you have Miri's Guile and Sensei's Top in your opening hand, isn't that like a little feel bad?
It can be a little feel bad, yes. The flip side of that is my deck casts a lot of sweepers that kills enchantments and artifacts. I mean, like you say, Sensei's Divining Top can protect itself, but I've had a number of games where I go turn 1 Miri's Guile, turn like 6 or 7, wipe the board, and then play my Sylvan Library.
Okay.
And there's also enough fetch effects, especially if one of the cards is top, you can play top, draw a card with it, and then shuffle your deck. So I don't very often encounter a situation where having 2 copies.
You're sad?
Yeah, sometimes I'll encounter the 3rd copy, and that makes me feel sad.
So we had a second question lined up right now.
Yes, I wanted to add kind of my own subset to your intro, because if we're going to be talking about my deck list and my version of the rock, there is one card in particular that always comes up when people look at my deck and go, wait, you're not playing that card?
So the rock is a green-black deck.
absent.
Yeah, so what card do you think of at home when you think of a green-black deck that's an auto-include?
Especially a green-black control deck.
Yeah, and what are you not playing?
The best card that I'm not playing is
Graham,
Deathrite
do you want
Shaman.
to guess? Oh, damn it. I was going to see if Graham was going to guess. You already knew? You had that.
I was already searching this one up.
All right,
Yeah.
good. Excellent.
I was like, it's got to be this.
Yeah.
So what is Deathrite Shaman, and why are you not playing it?
So Deathrite Shaman is a 1-mana 1/2 that costs a green-black hybrid. It's an elf shaman, so that can be relevant. It has 3 abilities. So
Basically a planeswalker.
Yeah, it often gets referred to as a planeswalker. It has tap, exile target land from a graveyard, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. It has pay a black and tap, exile target instant or sorcery card from any graveyard. Each opponent loses 2 life. And it has
each opponent?
Each opponent.
It doesn't target.
And pay a green and tap, exile target creature card from any graveyard. You gain 2 life.
So this card is nuts. This card is arguably too good, broken.
It's the best card in Legacy, and it's banned in Modern.
Yeah.
It's not the best card in Legacy. It's the best creature in Legacy.
Might be the best card in Legacy.
What's the best card in Legacy?
That's not worth talking
close.
about.
Okay.
No. This is a different argument that is on the Liam and Jarrett argue about
Okay,
show. This
okay.
is about Allison.
Okay.
We're talking
Allison,
about why she's not playing this card.
Why?
So, I do not think the Deathrite Shaman is a bad card. I think that most decks in Highlander that play Deathrite Shaman do so correctly. However, I think that most of the decks that play Deathrite Shaman are black-based, or black-blue, or 3-color. And I think that Deathrite Shaman has far more utility in a 3-color deck, or in a blue-based control deck, than it does in a green-black tap-out control deck like the Rock. So, going through the abilities.
Okay.
Add a mana of any color.
Seems good.
It's good. It's particularly good when you don't normally have access to green. Obviously, a mana dark is much better in black than in green, because green has lots of other options. And in a 2-color deck like this, which has a lot of fixing, the ramp and the fixing is less relevant. And the fact that this mana dork doesn't add mana every turn is a significant drawback.
That's fair. It's not reliable, yeah.
Also, a small factor is that 3-color decks are much more likely to be playing all 10 fetch lands, whereas a 2-color deck like mine is only playing 7. So the odds of having your own fetch land in your graveyard just go down. I have tested Deathrite Shaman on a couple of different occasions, and my deck simply wants to be tapping as much mana as possible every turn. So not being able to maximize the effect of its mana is frustrating. The 3rd ability to exile a creature and gain 2 life is nice. I don't really think that anyone's going to argue that this is not the weakest of the 3 abilities. It's nice to be able to... Maybe you are.
Disrupt Sandra Bullock.
Would, yeah.
Yeah, disrupt Sandra Bullock, disrupts Reanimator.
The second ability.
Yeah, I find the second ability is you don't really care about like incidental delve or like you can occasionally blank a Snapcaster Mage, but the 3rd ability to disrupt those creature-based graveyard combos.
And against aggressive decks to help.
Yeah, I just feel like gaining life is more important than killing them in a control deck.
Especially in this deck.
Well, the fact is that this deck already has such a good matchup against the decks that you want to gain life against that I feel like it's just, we're already playing the best like 6 life gain spells against an aggressive deck, or the best 8.
Sure.
So Deathrite Shaman's just kind of like lower down on that list. Its utility as a graveyard hoser is probably the best thing that has going for it. I don't disagree with the fact that the ability to remove creatures from graveyards is powerful. That being said, I've got some other spicy.
Oh my goodness.
Spicy includes for doing that.
Yeah.
And the middle ability to remove instants and sorceries. So much of the Deathrite Shaman play that I see in Highlander is people playing it in blue decks. They drop it. They get a little bit of color fixing mana ramp in their black-blue deck, and then they sit there with mana open. End of turn, tap all my mana, counter your spell, that's fine. Next turn, don't tap all my mana, you take 2, you take 2.
Slowly
And
sort of grind them out.
The Rock has a very long game plan, but it often wins by having like 5 or 10 powers worth of creatures on the board, so the incidental damage is less relevant, and I play a lot fewer instants and sorceries than blue-based control decks, so...
I think this leads very nicely into our next segment, which is we at North 100 are brewers. Every time we're up here, we're talking about new things, and while we've always tried to sort of talk about or defend the people who play the same deck, it's just not really our natural style. Like, Jared, what's the longest you've ever played a deck before?
When I first started playing the format, I played Blue-Eye Control for 6 months, but that was just because I didn't have the collection I have now.
Liam? Have you ever gone 2 weeks back-to-back with the same list?
Yeah, of course. Don't be insulting.
3 weeks?
Yes. No, when I came back from Halifax this time, I played Escape Shift for 5 tournaments in a row.
Okay.
So that's 2.5 weeks. It almost counts.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the most.
Yeah, I mean, my commitment to one list right now is I'm playing Fastbond for 2018, but I'm going to go through like 20 lists in that iteration, and there's going to be one card that's the same. So I think a lot of our critique of some of the cards that we're looking at, Allison, comes from this point of view of like, how good is this card in a wide range of lists, and how good is this card in a vacuum? Where Allison, how long have you been playing the Rock?
10 years.
10 years?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever
Her heart is black with the sort of like taint of killing people with creatures and planeswalkers.
But also
Mostly
green.
Liliana of the Veil.
I legitimately didn't realize this format had been around for that long.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've been playing the Rock and Highlander since about 6 months after Highlander really became a thing that people started playing in Victoria. That 6 months was my holdout period, and then I was like, all right, fine, I'm getting into this format. I'll just build the single Magic deck that I will have the most fun playing. And I figured out what that was, and I was right.
All right, so I got 2 questions. One is, what is the Rock? And 2, why? Why this deck?
So the Rock is a green-black control deck. We might a little bit later get into some of the different variations of how it can be played. I would say that there is a version of it that can be played that is more of a mid-range deck. And you might even be able to make a case for a version of the deck being a little bit more of like a combo or reanimation deck.
Sure.
But certainly the version that I have been playing for a long time is a tap-out control deck. It fulfills the game plan of a typical control deck of interacting with your opponent's cards, reacting to them, removing your opponent's resources, keeping them from significantly affecting the game while building up your own board. It has a fairly slow game plan, and it does an enormous amount of interaction with the opponent.
So you said 10 years ago you made the decision that this is the deck I'm going to play forever.
I thought about all of the things that I wanted in a Magic deck. I hate having to deal with mana screw and color screw. Okay. So I figured that I wanted my deck to be green. I wanted to be able to have as much control as possible over my mana base.
Yeah.
So I wanted a green deck, and I hated playing situational cards that make bad later game top decks. I hate. I have played other decks in other formats. I had an Is It Counterburn deck that I played for a couple of weeks.
Hold on. You've played another deck?
For a couple of weeks.
The mythos, the legend of Allison only playing the Rock is false.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, sometimes you got to change it up so that people don't know exactly what you're playing at all times.
I mean, that's how you live your life. Like,
Oh, me?
Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. I constantly move, so they don't know how to hit you.
I was taking a little bit of a vacation, but
Yeah.
it didn't last for very long. I knew I was going to go back to my one true love.
okay. So you
and I
never want to
hate-
get mana screwed.
yeah, and
you
I
always
hate-
want good draws.
Yeah, I hate drawing, spell snare on turn 6 or something that.
Yeah.
I can't stand
I
drawing
love it.
Miri's Guile on turn 20. That's just good hard living.
So I wanted to play a deck that had good top decks. I just wanted to have like every card in the deck be a good draw at as many points in the game as it could be.
Yeah.
And I looked at blue-green and I looked at blue-black, and I just enjoyed how much versatility blue-black has for dealing with. The thing about counter spells is that they're very powerful if you have them before your opponent does something. But Maelstrom Pulse is very powerful after your opponent does something.
Correct?
Yeah.
That's
No,
true. We're
no.
all in agreement.
That,
Destroy target non-land permanent. That sounds good.
Seems powerful.
But
So-
what if it has haste? All right, whatever.
Or an enter the battlefield ability.
yeah, so I mean that means that one of the deck's worst matchups is combo decks, because the deck plays very much like. I mean, it's been kind of quoted as being one of the most powerful fair decks in the format, and it plays very much like a sort of slugging boxing match.
Okay.
You hit me as hard as you can,
What are you
and then
just
I-
rope-a-doping people?
and then I will hit you as hard as I can, and we're going to go back and forward until one of us falls over, and it's, usually it's you. But that,
Oh no, I was just gonna say, surely a wrestling match would be more appropriate.
Ah.
There's a lot of rope-a-dope. Rope-a-dope's a pretty good description, actually. Allison does spend the first, 3 to 4 turns of a game just, kind of not doing anything and then killing you.
I was just wondering if we wanted to talk about why the deck is called the Rock.
Oh.
No, it's not actually... Well, okay, sure. The Rock and his millions.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, fair enough.
All right, so you just hinted to it. What does that actually mean?
So, I don't even know if Allison's actually playing any of these cards.
not anymore.
I don't think so.
Not
So,
anymore.
They printed Planeswalkers
The
since
Rock-
then.
Yeah.
yeah. So the Rock started as well, I guess at the time it was called Type 2. So it started as a standard deck in Urza's block, with Phyrexian Plague Lord.
Hi there, carrier.
Yeah, you notice his pose there, right?
Is this a cleric, by
Right.
the way?
Wait,
Right?
hold on. So
Yeah,
for
this-
those of
this
you
card-
not watching the visual version, he's
Yeah.
he's flashing back and
Dwayne
forth.
the Rock Johnson.
Yeah.
Phyrexian Plague Lord.
Is
the
this a
Rock.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson trading card?
No.
Do those exist? It's just a photo you found on Google?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, that's his turnbuckle pose.
Sure, but you
Right.
just found one that perfectly fit into a card viewer?
What is a
Yeah.
turnbuckle pose?
When-
this doesn't
when he
matter.
gets up
This
on
is
the
standing
turnbuckle.
up.
Look, there's a different
poses.
show for this search.
Anyway, so it's the Rock. Every wrestler who has a lot of fans has their the name for their fan base basically, and the Rock would just refer to the millions and millions of Rock's fans around the world. Typically, the and millions was set by the people in the arena. He'd be like the millions and millions of Rock's fans. And in the case of this deck, the millions was Deranged Hermit.
Ah, hello.
Because it would make 4 squirrel tokens.
And
So
you
you'd
throw the squirrels at people.
have Phyrexian Plague Lord, the Rock, and then you'd make the millions with the squirrel tokens, and then you just kill all your opponent's stuff, and then also your opponent.
And I mean,
And for some reason, the deck is still called the Rock.
the game plan, as Liam said, has changed a lot because they've printed better cards since then.
Evolved slightly, you
but
could say.
it still plays very much the same kind of way. You play green mana ramp. You play black early disruption, discard spells, cheap removal. You generally want to accelerate your own mana and disrupt your opponent's game plan until you can hit 4 or 5 mana, and then you start playing powerful creatures and powerful planeswalkers. And planeswalkers have affected this deck so much because there are so many green and black planeswalkers that have an ability that destroys something and an ability that draws you cards or creates creatures.
How many Planeswalkers are you playing now?
13.
Okay.
That's a
Has
lot.
it ever been higher? Maybe been 14.
yeah,
You've been trying.
I love the answer with Allison. She's like, yes, in 2007. Which variational list are we on here? Number 100.
Well, in 2007, there were no Planeswalkers. So.
Yeah, but, I promise every time they print a new green/black planeswalker, I do my best to try and put it in the deck.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not all of them make it, but I play as many of them as I can justify.
All right, Jer. Have you ever tried playing the Rock? Not against it. Obviously, we've all had the misfortune of sitting across from Allison being crushed at some point. But
because we're losing, not because we dislike playing Allison. That's the only reason it's misfortunate.
Oh,
right?
I
well, maybe for you. I don't know.
Oh, I play Serge decks, and she plays all the sweepers. Either my creature sweepers get crushed, or when I play Enchantress, her artifact sweepers crush me, or enchantment sweepers crush me. It's not good.
I have a pretty brutal story of losing to Allison. In the year she won the year-end tournament in 2015.
Yeah.
We ended up playing in the first round, and I had predicted this would happen. I was playing Scapeshift, which I think has a good matchup against the Rock.
It's combo.
It's a combo deck, and like the Rock just wants to sit there and ramp mana.
I want to interact with your board, and like I said, it's a boxing match. I say you hit me first, and if your first
and I'm
punch
just like
is 20,
we were both just standing there, just like looking at each other, and neither one of us throwing a punch.
All right.
And she won that match, and then she lost her second match, and I won my second match, which meant we got to play again. And then she beat me again, so I got double eliminated.
The old double jeopardy.
By her in the year-end tournament.
By the way, we're not using that structure anymore. No more double jeopardy, probably.
Most likely.
I mean, I
For
might get
future
Alex
years.
Trebek on the line, and
We'll
we'll
see.
figure something out. But
Sorry,
it'll only be good double jeopardy.
I sort of diverged.
That's fine. That's fine. Have you ever tried playing the Rock?
Yeah, a couple times.
And it didn't. Obviously, it didn't hold a 10-year appeal for you.
Well, nothing really holds a 10-year appeal for me. If it makes it to week 2, that's like a really good sign.
All
So
right.
I've played it more than once, so it's not big white.
And was it based on? Oh my goodness. Was it based on her list, or did you do your own thing?
I've played the heavy Planeswalker version. So I've played the Rock maybe 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
I've played the heavy Planeswalker version, but mostly I play a more creature-heavy version based on like just ETB creatures, and I always play the Recurring Nightmare Survival of the Fittest package, or at least Recurring Nightmare.
Yeah, Liam. Too vanilla for your taste.
Well, a little known fact, my least favorite card in Magic history is Liliana of the Veil.
How many do you own?
4, but that's not important.
Wait,
Just
what?
thought I'd throw that in.
This card's great. Why do you hate this card?
It's like an emotional thing. So like when I started playing Magic, I got into Magic playing Modern when both Deathrite Shaman and Bloodbraid Elf were legal. So you played against Jund a lot.
Okay, sure.
And I lost to a lot of turn 2 Liliana of the Veils. Like really a lot. I was like playing guerrilla tactics in my decks to like kill this thing when they upticked it. I played a deck with 4 main deck Obstinate Baloth and 4 main deck Loxodon.
You're like, come on, make me this card, I dare you.
Yeah, just like praying to get paired against Pox and stuff, and it was never enough. So I don't think I have played the Rock. I was actually trying to think. I thought you might ask me about it. I'm not sure I have. Yeah, don't think I have.
I think you were asking about copying my list, and I think that the Rock is one of these decks that really, like also a number of the more complex combo decks that we've seen people play, is one of those decks that really rewards being the kind of person who enjoys playing that deck for a long time.
Yes.
Because I've had a number of people ask to copy my list, put the deck together, play it for a couple of weeks, go, how does anybody win with this? Take it apart and never play it again.
I famously remember our good friend Alistair. Just like,
Yep.
he was like, this deck seems great, and he was like a blue control player. He
Yeah.
like would play like blue, white, and Esper, and those decks weren't doing very well at the time. And so he went to Allison, and he was like, yeah, can I like have your list? And you were like, yeah, of course. You might have even lent him the deck for one tournament or something, right? Like,
No, I don't.
No.
Don't lend people.
Not so much. That's
no,
fair.
it hasn't gone that far. But anyway, you gave him the list, and then he proceeded to go 2-2 for like 6 weeks or something.
So yeah, the thing about a fair deck that has a good matchup and everything is you can't expect to just. I don't know how. Yeah, how do you win with this list?
Great question.
We were joking earlier that not only is there the mythos of you and the legend around this deck, but there's also the curse on you've done very, very well with it. And has anyone else?
Yeah, so one other person has won a tournament with the Rock, and actually I should give a shout out to Hayden, who also played the Rock for a little while and was doing like reasonably well with it. So there have been a couple other people who have like done okay, but no one on the same level.
And then Jared and I have experimented with like Abzan versions of something similar.
And
it's rock light, rockish.
This last year I played a bug deck, which instead of being like the more traditional blue mid-range decks, I was actually base black-green splashing blue. Like I had maybe 1 double blue spell in my deck. And I was only playing like 4 counter spells, and I had a bunch of success on that deck.
Well, I think I think a lot of it really does come down to familiarity with the deck and familiarity with the matchups.
Okay.
It's the kind of thing that is so different from brewers who build a deck, play it for a week, build a new deck, play it for a couple of weeks, experience so many different versions of Magic. Is I just have so much experience with all of these cards and how these cards interact with all of these different matchups that I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm playing the game on a slightly different level than other people who just pick up the deck and go, oh, these are good cards. I play good cards. But I sit down for my opponent and go, okay, so this person might be on a Blue Moon plan, so I'm going to plan which order to play these basics and fetch lands and non-basics to go and fetch the appropriate basics so that I can still cast a turn 4 triple green spell into a turn 5 triple black spell. I play Murmuring Bosk in my deck, which is a...
Murmuring Bosk is a neat one.
Murmuring Bosk is a land. It's a land forest. It comes into play tapped unless you reveal a Tree Folk card from your hand when it comes into play.
No Tree Folk in the deck anymore,
No Tree Folk in the deck.
Anymore? Were there ever any?
Wickerbow Elder for some time.
Yeah.
And then in addition to tapping for green because it is a forest, it can also tap for black or white and it deals 1 damage to you.
Why?
So, honestly, mostly it's because enemy color decks have been so poorly treated when it comes to mana bases. There are just so many allied color dual cycles that enemy colors do not get access to. I've been so frustrated in recent years when they printed the Tango lands,
and the cycle
lands.
and then also the cycling lands. So now there are 4 different basic
like fetchable, whatever.
ally colors,
Yeah.
and there's still only 2 enemies.
Interesting.
So Murmuring
Okay.
Bosk is the kind of card that might get cut when they finish those cycles eventually. But currently this is the 3rd green-black duel that my fetch lands can fetch up. And playing this in the deck gives me another line of being able to go turn 1 fetch for this when I wanted land to come into play tapped. So now my next fetch has the option to go and get a comes into play untapped land. And it's those kind of like thin lines of when you're playing the deck. Do I crack this fetch at the end of the turn to go and get a Murmuring Bosk so that it's into play tapped and I have a tapped land taken out of my deck? Or do I leave this fetch land because I might draw a Sensei's Top or a Miri's Guile and then want the opportunity to fetch my shuffle my deck afterwards?
Now, I think all of us, when we're playing Highlander, we're, just through experience in the format and understanding playing around stuff, that we do this at some level, but I don't think we do it to that level.
Well, it also just becomes not easier, but just like more natural the more you do it with the same cards, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure we like quite consciously think about what cards we're playing around, whereas Allison's had sort of 80 of these cards in her deck for the last 3 years, so it's probably even more subconscious than it is for us.
And I think that there are a couple of incredibly talented Magic players in the format that I see play a variety of different decks at exactly the same level, but that's just because they're incredibly good Magic players, and I don't want to have to be that good to play my deck.
You were going to say something?
Yeah, it's the same thing in blue decks. When you start playing blue decks long enough, you realize that Serum Visions and Preordain are a lot different than Ponder and Brainstorm, and you often want to fetch before you play Serum Visions and Preordain, so you can keep the cards you've scryed intact where they are. Because
top or bottom, it doesn't actually matter. If they're bad, you want them to stay on the bottom. If they're good, you need them to stay on top.
It's really unintuitive to a lot of players, and I see lots of them just like fetching the same turn or the turn after they play these cards and just like completely negate a lot of the benefit from
I never
those
even thought of that.
Those 2 cards in particular.
That is a really powerful tip. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think most commonly it happens when you've scryed both cards to the bottom and you think, well, whatever, both cards are on the bottom, I'm going to fetch. But they were bad. You want them to stay on the bottom.
And especially with the new scry rule, in effect, it can compound a lot. Like, say you're playing a combo deck with all the 1 mana cantrips. You have Opt, Sleight of Hand, Serum Visions, Preordain. Like, that's just 4 cards off the top of my head. Then if you're playing cards like Impulse, Anticipate, Omen.
Sorry, can you go
dig
back
through
a step?
time.
Dig through time.
Yeah.
Oh my
You
goodness.
end up knowing the bottom 10 cards of your deck
These
or
are all
cards you don't want.
These are all card selection spells that end up potentially or certainly putting some number of cards on the bottom of your deck.
What do you mean by the new scry rule?
So the Vancouver Mulligan when you mulligan a hand, when you end up keeping a hand, you get to scry after you've kept your hand. And so if you put that card on the bottom, presumably you don't want it or you don't want it early. So keeping that card on the bottom of your deck can be advantageous to you because...
Oh, you're just referring to the fact that Sky is so common now, not that there's been a rules change. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Talking about card selection, I actually have a question for you, Allison. How do you manage playing a control deck with like comparatively much worse card selection, right? We talked about it at the start of the show.
I play more card selection cards like Miri's Cal.
Sure. But you play 3 instead of 2, right? Like your card selection is worse.
Yeah,
so how do you handle that? Like what do you do?
Well, I think the main trade-off with black green is that you have less ability to filter your draws, but your draws are more versatile.
Okay.
Because a blue-based control deck has a lot of counterspells that once your opponent has resolved a creature, this counterspell does nothing. It doesn't deal with the board state that you're already losing on. Whereas, especially with the number of planeswalkers that I play in my deck, the chances of drawing a 5-mana spell that says make a creature that can block or destroy a creature that's in play. I mean, one of my favorite people I was surprised to hear that she's so high up the list, but one of the favorite planeswalkers that I have in the deck is Vraska, who is
the old
Vraska.
The bad one.
The bad one.
Allison
playable one.
Allison doesn't like the 6-mana, much more powerful one.
That's because she's 6 mana.
I really like the new one.
So does Vraska.
So Vraska is a 5-mana planeswalker, 3 green-black. She starts with 5 loyalty. For +1, until your next turn, whenever a creature deals combat damage to Vraska, destroy that creature. Which is not a very powerful effect, but it kind of keeps her around a little bit. Mostly it does nothing. Mostly it's just blocking her. However, her -3 is destroy target non-land permanent. And then she also has an ultimate of -7, put 3 1/1 black assassin creature tokens onto the battlefield that have, when they deal combat damage to a player, that player loses the game.
Real talk. Have you ever won with her ult?
I have taken someone to lethal so that they have lost the game with 3 you lose the game triggers on the stack.
Because she hit them with all 3 assassins.
But
it's a trigger.
Thank you.
I also played a game. I also played a game against someone where I stuck her. I was upticking her. They had a Wrath in their hand, so they were more than happy to allow me to just like keep plussing her until I got ultimate. Then once I got Vraska to 7, I cast Duress, took the Wrath, ultimated her, and then they hadn't been playing creatures in their hand because they knew they were going to Wrath. And then on the next turn, they're like, I can play 2 creatures. I was like, sorry, you need 3.
Okay, that's hot.
So that's the neat thing. So the deck plays a lot of cards that do their best to play differently in different matchups. So in most matchups, for example, Vraska will come down. She's 5 mana, destroy an online permanent, and then either your opponent then attacks her and kills her, which she gained you some life. And if this is an aggressive match, like 5 mana, destroy something, gain a bit of life is okay. It's not amazing, but it's okay. However, if you have any kind of board presence and can protect her, then you plus her, and then either they have to kill their board killing her, or she sticks around.
You get a second Vindicate or Maelstrom Pulse or whatever.
Yeah, which if you're not playing against an incredibly fast deck, is just so hard for those decks to recover from because she's so versatile, she can kill a creature, or she can kill a Sulfuric Vortex, or she can kill a sword. So, but if you play her against a control deck where they have nothing on the board and that you just snuck her through counterspells, you just uptick and uptick and uptick and uptick, and then you make assassins and they die.
So to answer Liam's question, it's deck construction. Like the way that you smooth out these draws is to be unbelievably consistent. So kind of getting into that classic definition of mid-range that we were talking about before, which is you have no dead draws, everything is redundant. And I really like your definition of a counterspell there, which is it doesn't do anything once the creature is resolved, which is fair.
Yeah, just to reiterate, one of the words you used, I think, is redundant, and I think that's a lot of what Allison's deck benefits from as opposed to blue decks, is that blue decks don't get as much redundancy as the green-black deck gets. Like, just the number of Wraths and catch-all answers is really huge in this deck.
I mean, basically every multicolor card that I'm playing in my deck has some version of the words destroy target non-land permanent on it.
Nice.
There's, or permanents. There's Vraska, Abrupt Decay, Maelstrom Pulse, Gaze of Granite, Pernicious Deed, Crime and Punishment. Like all of these cards kill 1 or more things just gone.
Has anybody seen anyone other than Allison ever play Gaze of Granite? Like, real talk.
Well, this is, I think, one of the things kind of along the Mirizga line is that this deck gets access to a lot of cards. Okay, fine, we'll argue because Mirizga is worse than other cards once it's in play, but this deck gets access to a lot of cards that are Highlander playable and are powerful effects. They just don't see play in any other deck because there's no other home for them. There's
That
no
can support
green
those good cards.
and black control deck that is both getting to these mana costs and playing the kind of game plan where it wants that effect at those mana costs. I think probably the best example of that is Massacre Worm. Because it's just like Massacre Worm is a strong effect that I don't see anyone else play.
Like Big
in
Black
Highlander.
plays it, but that deck's just like not super common either.
Yeah.
Any black-based mid-ranger control deck can play this one.
I have played this card in pod before, I will say.
Yeah.
Have you ever podded into a Massacre Worm? That's
It feels
certainly
good.
Well,
You'll often play this one in Reanimator as well, just as something that you can eventually cast, and is also a pretty reasonable reanimation target.
I think one other thing too is like with specifically Gaze of Granite is there's not any other deck that wants like the second copy of it, right? Because obviously Gaze of Granite is slightly worse Pernicious Deed. And there's maybe a few decks that want to play Pernicious Deed, but not a whole lot of decks that want to play two Pernicious Deeds.
So we should probably tell people what Massacre Worm does. It's a 6-mana creature, 3 black, 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 for a 6/5. When it enters the battlefield, creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn. And just as a static effect, whenever a creature your opponent controls dies, they lose 2 life.
Yeah, wrath attached to a creature. Now, the deck plays some interesting stuff, but let's talk about variations. So obviously, throughout your years of playing this deck, it's changed a lot. We talked earlier, you know, the deck got its name because of 5-drop creatures. And then WotC decided to create planeswalkers, and that changed stuff.
Ruin Standard forever. No, okay, this is again a different show. Sorry, carry on.
Do you have a side podcast where you just like hate on Standard?
No, I just think Planeswalkers were bad for Standard.
Really?
Yeah, but again, different show.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I like planeswalkers.
They're great in Eternal formats, wonderful in Modern,
Yeah,
really bad for Standard.
interesting. Jer was mentioning earlier there's a creature-based version.
Yeah.
Which is basically the version that I used to play
Yeah.
for the first 5 or 6 years.
What was that? What made that different?
A lot more creature-based interaction, a lot of effects that get creatures back from your graveyard, a lot more creatures with Enter the Battlefield effect. Basically, as many of your spell effects as possible put on creatures. So instead of playing Doomblade, playing Shriekmaw, which is a creature
I love
with the same
Shriekmaw.
effect.
I'm really sad that Shriekmaw hasn't seen as much play now.
Well, now there's the Chupacabra too, which
Oh,
is
the
they get to see
Chupa thingy.
even less play.
Really? You think you play Chupa Thingy over Shriekmaw?
Yeah.
In a lot of decks, yeah.
Really?
The one
Not in
man,
this
that's
deck,
a big
but-
deal.
So this deck was able to generate a huge amount of advantage through recycling its creature effects. So you can go evoke Shriekmaw
Yeah.
and then cast Profane Command modes, kill your creature, reanimate Shriekmaw, kill your creature.
That's hot.
Or, like,
Survival of the Fittest was, or sorry, Survival Recurring Nightmare. This was like definitely the best
Yes,
shell for those two cards.
the backbone of that deck was Survival of the Fittest and Recurring Nightmare. So Survival of the Fittest is a 2-mana green enchantment, 1 mana green, and it has the activated ability, pay a green, discard a creature card from your hand,
Yeah.
search your deck for a creature card and put it into your hand.
Yeah, seems good.
So you can turn any creature in your hand into any creature in your deck.
Yeah, notably no color restriction, so you can tutor for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're trying to think about how this card works, it basically turns it into a non-color restricted Green Sun Zenith. Every creature in your deck becomes a non-color restricted Green Sun Zenith.
But also, as many of the decks that use it abuse, it also allows you to pay 2 green mana and discard a creature card to take any creature card from your deck, put it into your graveyard, and then get another one into your hand. So if you're looking to reanimate creatures, you can
Like Massacre Worm.
discard something, go and get a reanimation target, discard the reanimation target, go and get something you want, and then cast reanimate and get the creature back. And the main reanimation spell that the deck was playing was Recurring Nightmare, which is a 3-mana black enchantment, 2 and a black, with a very strange activated ability.
Yeah, this is a weird one.
Yeah.
The colon appears like 8 paragraphs down in the middle of this card. It's like a short novel telling you the story until you finally get to figure out what it does.
Yeah, and so no one understands how you can't interact with this card. So the activated ability is sacrifice a creature,
'Kay.
return Recurring Nightmare to your hand,
Okay.
colon.
So that means I can disenchant it with the ability on the stack, right?
No, it means you can't, because
Incorrect.
assuming that you play this correctly and don't allow yourself to get accidental triggers or pass
Sure,
priority.
yeah.
You cast Recurring Nightmare, it resolves, and then you return it to your hand.
Yeah.
And by the time your opponent can respond, it's already back in your hand.
Don't put any constellation cards in your deck.
So you sacrifice a creature, you return it to your hand, and then you return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's an ability that you can only activate as a sorcery, but it basically just gives you, the player, this permanent emblem that says pay 3 mana, turn a creature in your play into a creature in your graveyard.
Yeah, just switch places. This is trading places the card.
And when you have also survival, which says pay green, turn any creature in your hand into any creature in your deck, you very quickly can turn any creature in any zone into any creature in any other zone. And I have absolutely had games where I go, Recurring Nightmare, sacrifice my Kitchen Finks, get back my Thragtusk, Kitchen Finks persists. Recurring Nightmare, sacrifice my Thragtusk, get a token, get back Eternal Witness, get back a card from my graveyard.
Yeah.
Recurring Nightmare, sacrifice my Eternal Witness, get back my
No,
Thragtusk.
this was my introduction to the Rock, was this version of the deck. Which was, and I've seen Pod, I've seen more of a Reanimator one.
I was thinking it was more Freaky Friday the card.
That's just a commentary from me. That's just editorializing, not suggesting you win that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't make an argument for it. I've tried.
Card's not good.
No, card's really
Descent
bad.
into Madness?
It's
Yeah.
worse than Smokestack, and that card's also bad.
I really want Smokestacks to be good,
I agree, but tragically, it's only playable in one deck.
which is the Smokestacks deck.
Smokestacks, yeah.
You have the as a build around. Wow, tangent. What were we talking about? Other than the Rock?
Allison's reanimation version of the Rock.
Value Rock.
Value Rock.
The
And you got introduced to the
Rex,
Rock from that deck.
Yes. Jer.
Yeah, so this is the version of the deck I usually play.
I'm sorry, by the way.
That's fine.
I had reasonable success on it. It's super fun and grindy. You basically never lose a long game against a fair deck, which is one of the, it always feels nice. Like, once the game gets past turn 6, you're like, all right, value time.
And I think that can be said for most versions of the Rock. There's definitely, I would not make the argument that the Planeswalker-based version that I am playing is strictly superior to the creature-based version. I think that there's so many tools that have been printed for both decks that both are valid, fine, competitive decks.
Yeah.
I enjoy just the versatility of the Planeswalker.
Well, Planeswalkers are like these great modal cards that
Planeswalkers are fun.
Look at all
fan
these
of modal
abilities they
cards.
have, right?
However,
Your Lucky Charms.
I like
Are they
modal
playing
cards.
Planeswalkers?
Modal? No.
I mean, they basically say
They are
or.
technically modal. I think I might have Jace the Mind Sculptor in the deck
There you
because I
go.
had to win somehow, but...
however, the creature-based deck has a much better ability to actually end the game. Both decks can win.
Whoa.
Both decks can win the game.
There is a
Yeah.
difference.
But the Planeswalker deck has a much more difficult time ending the game.
Well, here's a question. What are some versions of the Rock that you think are not as good? Is there an aggro the Rock? Does that even work, or is that just black mold?
That's sort of a different archetype, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's good to explore. Like, what are the boundaries of this deck right here? So we have sort of almost a mid-range creature deck. We have a pod value reanimator grindy creature deck. We have like a tap-out control planeswalker deck that plays all these sweepers. All of these three decks fall under the umbrella of the Rock. What isn't the Rock?
Well, I would say, if you're asking about bad versions of the Rock, I'd say that the main trap that people can fall into, and this is why I was playing a Survival of the Fittest Recurring Nightmare deck up until the point when I decided that I wasn't, and then I cut like 15 cards all at once, is that the creature-based deck has a lot of creature-based synergies that it needs to capitalize on.
Okay.
And the Planeswalker control deck does not. And I think that it can be a big trap for people to simply try and take the best 100 cards that the Rock deck as a whole could play and put them into one shell.
Interesting.
And that was why when I switched
Yeah.
because there were so many creature interaction effects. Like, Survival of the Fittest is only good if you've got a bunch of creatures in your deck. And as I started cutting creatures for powerful planeswalkers, I was getting to the point where I couldn't consistently activate Survival because
Yeah,
I
you don't have
wanted
a
to
card
draw-
in hand. Interesting.
And you want to be playing all these mana dorks that then die to all your massive sweepers.
Yeah.
So I don't think that either of these versions are bad, but you have to decide which version you want to play
Commit
and
to
then
one.
commit to that one.
That's really good feedback, and hence you're not playing Deathrite Shaman.
How did your points change between the different
Great question.
the different decks? Because I know, like, obviously survival is a pointed card, so you were playing survival, and now I know you're not. So
Yeah,
how did the points change?
The survival deck wanted to be playing Survival of the Fittest, Recurring Nightmare, and Demonic Tutor.
Well, recurring nightmare, not points, right?
It used to be.
Oh yeah.
Briefly.
Not okay.
There are some chaotic times.
Look,
Liam.
I've played this. Like I've played this deck through a lot of points.
Yeah. No, I defer to you on whether or not cards in your deck were pointed.
So
In
talking about
fact, Sensei's Divining Top used to be.
Oh,
pointed,
yeah.
and I cut Sensei's Divining Top at that point in time and was only playing 7 Library and Mirror's Count.
so
I
other
think that's
cards used to be
excusable.
pointed. Like if I look at the lands list, Light from Loam used to be points. Wasteland used to be points. Crucible of Worlds used to be points. Sensei's Divining Top used to be points. And you're just like, we've had some weird decisions on points in the years.
You know what? It's all okay now. Format's pretty healthy.
The council's doing a good job.
Blue
Well,
decks are a little unplayable. That's okay.
Like, those weird linear strategies used to be a lot more powerful because creatures just on the whole used to be worse.
Suck, that's true,
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
and that's a big reason lots of these like sort of oddball cards used to be points, is that like just trying to like the mid-range decks were just like much worse. Like they didn't have the clocks they used to have. The creatures weren't like incidentally goozling some strategies like
No Reclamation Sage back then, eh?
no, there was like yeah, you had to play like Viridian Shaman or like
Wickerbow Elder.
Or Wickerbow Elder.
Wickerbow Elder.
Or Acidic Slime. You know, you're at 4 or 5 mana.
Exactly, like they were less efficient and just like also just didn't have the like versatility. So
So the survival version used to be playing mostly survival and Demonic Tutor. Demonic Tutor was so useful in that deck because the deck had this sort of like combo-ish bent to it. If the game had gone long and you had access to like 8 or 9 mana, which was fairly common,
Yeah.
you could go Demonic Tutor for Eternal Witness, get Demonic Tutor back, Demonic Tutor for Recurring Nightmare, sacrifice Eternal Witness, get something into play, do that again, get back Eternal Witness, get back Demonic
And
Tutor.
then just recur something
keep
over
going.
and over and over. Yeah.
Once I switched to the Planeswalker deck, there became fewer kind of combo lines, and the deck just became fairer. At which point, I took out those cards, and I just had points left over for fast mana.
Well, talking about combo, I mean, if you're playing a green-black pod list, how do you not find yourself slipping into like a Malira pod, like a creature-based combo deck that just wins on the spot? Because I think sometimes there's this direction players can go into where like, well, I have 98 of the cards in the shell. I can easily put this 2-card combo in. Why wouldn't I just do that so I can win games? An example would be, you know, playing Primeval Titan into Dark Depths Thespian stage. You're like, well, I have the ramp, I can play this 6-drop anyways, and then I get this 2-card I win combo. It's just like A plus B and then I win.
This is really a window into our deck building theories here, Serge. So I now understand how I ended up with all the combos deck.
Yeah?
Like-
So,
yeah.
so my insight onto that is
Yeah.
that I never wanted to play those cards, so I haven't experimented with that deck.
Is that it?
when I played this deck with Pod before, but that was when Pod was many fewer points.
Yeah.
So
I did play Pod before it was points.
Yeah.
Because it was just
Before pod with points.
it was a fair value. It was like a good value card.
because creatures
Yeah.
weren't there. But keep going.
But now that Pod is so many points, it's currently 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
I just don't think playing Pod outside of the dedicated
Pod decks.
Pod decks where if you have this in play, you have to try harder to win or to not win than to win. It's easy to just like you
have a
just keep
computer pick
activating
your
and you're like,
plays and you might
oh, I'll
win.
get this thing that untaps it. Oh, I'll get this other way to untap it. Oh, I just won.
So to make sure we're all on the same page, we're talking about Birthing Pod, which is a 4-mana artifact. It costs a green Phyrexian mana, so you can pay 2 life or pay a green.
Were you throwing up gang signs there?
I was trying to do the Phyrexian mana symbol. So 3 in a Phyrexian green for an artifact, and it has the activated ability 1 in a Phyrexian green, tap and sacrifice a creature. So all of those words have to be done. You may search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 1 greater than the converted mana cost of the creature you sacrificed, and then put that card directly into the battlefield. Then shuffle. You can only do this as a sorcery. So this card, big, you know, it's shaped formats. It's
But
been banned in formats.
I think I agree with Jared that when you put Pod and the combos into your deck, at that point you probably don't want to be wasting the time that the Rock does as a control deck and more
Doing
just
other-
focus on
Sure.
winning. Because as I alluded to earlier, the Rock, one of the Rock's drawbacks is that it's good at winning. It's not very good at ending games.
Ah.
Generally speaking, I will win the game about 5 or 6 turns before the game
You
is over.
actually win.
I often joke that I don't actually understand how I'm supposed to win a game. I keep playing until my opponents scoop up their cards.
You're like, now what? I have 8 planeswalkers. I'm plussing them all, and I'm just staring at you.
I mean, a great example was Liam and I played a game just the other night, and
Yeah, this was pretty agonizing.
so the board state ended up with me about like 8 or 10 lands in play, ace and a planeswalker, Sorin Markov.
Yeah, good planeswalker.
And Liam's side of the board was a City of Traitors and a Winter Orb, and that was it.
Liam.
And Liam,
Allison was at 2 for a lot of this game. Sorry, 5. First game was 2.
and then Liam did not draw a land for what, like 10, 15 turns?
All of them.
Yeah.
Every turn. Yeah.
Liam did not draw another land.
But you just couldn't win at that point still.
And
Well, no, she had won. Just the game wasn't over.
Yeah, I mean, I had definitely, I had won the game, but the only thing that I had in play was Sorin Markov. So Sorin Markov's a 6-mana planeswalker,
Yeah.
3 black. Another example of like a powerful card that doesn't often see play in other decks, just because
Yeah.
there's
Triple
no.
black's
too
really
hard,
hard
yeah.
to cast or whatever.
He has 4 loyalty. He has +2. He deals 2 damage to target creature or player, and you gain 2 life.
Yeah.
These.
-3. Target opponent's life total becomes 10.
This feels like it ought to help you end games.
And -7. You control target player during that player's next turn.
Not so
Great.
good when your opponent doesn't have lands.
I pretty much never activate the middle ability, the -3 on Sorin. I have once or twice after my opponent has done an infinite life combo.
You're
They've
like,
put
no,
themselves to a
you go to
million.
10.
I'm like, yeah, you're 10, you're dead. But generally speaking, Sorin just comes down and goes plus.
Mind
Mindslaver
control,
you,
yeah.
plus,
Yeah.
Mindslaver you. But in this game, there was no point in me Mindslavering Liam because he clearly could not cast any of the cards. He had Mindslaver did nothing. So
Correct.
I actually ticked Sorin Markov up to 20 loyalty.
Yeah, 24. You just 20'd me with this card.
Yeah.
I'm okay, pardon me.
And so, like, definitely if Liam had been able to do anything, I could have taken control of 3 of his turns back to back.
But
So, like, I was in control. I was winning. I had won that game, but I couldn't end the game because
Amazing.
the deck is... Which means that if you're playing against decks that have the ability to... Oops, I win.
Sure,
It's a
that's
much
when they
worse
catch you off
matchup
guard.
than the creature decks that can actually just... I attack you for 4, I attack you for 4, you're dead.
Just for context of how we got into this situation, there was a Bomac Courier and a Fire Blast involved.
Oh, yeah,
I
this
had
sounds like-
some
this
lands
sounds like my
beforehand.
kinda deck.
I mean, it actually seemed like it was going to go really well for me. Allison was like pretty low. I got to attack for some damage. Fire Blast, you're down to 5. Sacked my Bomac Courier, drew City of Traitors and Winter Orb. It was like,
You're like,
oh,
I'm gonna lock
sweet.
out
Now
the
I'm just
game.
going to draw a mountain and win this game. And then there wasn't a mountain in the
man.
top 15 cards of my deck, and I died.
amazing.
But boy, did I die slowly. I had to, I couldn't concede, right? Because you've always got to play to the out of, small meteor hits your opponent.
Yeah,
Or,
of course. Allison could drop dead at any moment. You could win the game. She could have a stroke.
Look, that's a little dark.
Play to your outs.
But at the same time, you're not wrong. And so you're always alive until you're dead. You got to make your opponent kill you.
Yeah, 1 is not 0. Doesn't matter if that's in the game or in real life.
I think this attitude for me comes from playing online card games where you're playing around much less cruel outs, your opponent loses power.
Yeah,
That's okay.
Their house could get hit by a meteorite. You
Well,
never know. You just see
Your,
their
opponent's
disconnect.
your opponent's pizza arrives.
Right, exactly. Their cat pees on their keyboard.
Yeah.
Look, you got lots of outs in online games. In live Magic, certainly fewer. But I play to them anyway, just in case. Also, she looked like she was having fun.
Fair. All right, team.
I don't get to have my planeswalkers to 20 loyalty.
Yeah. I have a real quick question. Any closing remarks from anybody on The Rock before we start moving to our closing segments here?
I would like to just make a quick note. You
Please.
asked about the points earlier.
Right, yeah.
The current list, which we can put in the description
Please,
to this
yeah. We're definitely
video.
we're gonna get some questions for that. So.
The points for this deck currently are mostly fast mana, Mox,
Okay.
Mox, Soaring, and Mind Twist, now that Soaring's gone down.
Seems fair.
But those really are not crucial to the deck.
Especially
They're
the Moxen, right?
Yeah, the Moxen are not crucial to the deck. They're some of the best cards that you can put in, but I know a lot of people have concerns about trying to build a Highlander deck that doesn't cost $1 million.
Fair.
And if you have 98 of these cards and you just don't have the 2 Moxen, it really does not affect the deck that much to
Put a
say
Demonic Tutor.
put in a Demonic
Yeah,
Tutor or
yeah.
something else. There are some decks that super want the Moxen, This deck is not one of them.
Cool. That's a really good closing remark.
I was just going to say one other thing, which is that we, and mostly me, oftentimes give Allison a lot of trouble over the cards she plays.
Yeah.
It's all in jest.
Yeah,
We get it.
I do as well.
It's
Yeah.
You guys know at the end of the day that I'm right.
Well, she's also
okay, let's
she has
not
the
go
best.
this
She has the
far.
best record with the Rock of anyone at this table. She's the undisputed Rock
Certainly true.
authority.
That's certainly true.
And she's the only one who seems to be able to win with this list. So clearly something
well,
works
at
for
this
her.
table. So a couple other people,
Yeah.
killed me with some 6-mana Vraskas.
Yeah, but that's fair. Jared, we'll give you a chance. Any closing remarks?
No.
All right.
Feel free to put Deathrite Shaman in your black deck.
Don't be swayed to the dark side.
So even though we just heard a story of powerful magic, let's go to our closing segment, Powerful Magic. And up today is this is going to surprise you, Allison.
shock.
I know. Tell us another story where you hopefully crush. I don't know, maybe Jared. I don't know.
That's already been one of those stories too. Jared told it.
Well, I'm the one who's up next, and I don't want any
Yeah,
more.
double jeopardy.
Well, I do remember crushing you in a game once where you were on your Enchantress survive. What's that? Seismic Assault?
Oh, yeah.
And, all right, I was going to tell a different story, but I'll tell this one.
Oh no!
Excellent.
So you were playing your typical, I don't know what the heck is going on.
Yeah, Surge deck.
You've got a bunch of enchantments in play. You've managed to get Seismic Assault, and you're about to do something that draws you basically your deck and hurls it at my face. Mm-hmm. So one of the cards that I play that gets discussed a lot is Crime Punishment. Crime Punishment is a split card from Dissension that I pretty much just play for punishment. Punishment is X, green, black, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments with converged mana cost X.
This is Gaze of Granite 3. Sorry, carry on.
Well, it's just X. It's
Just X
or less.
It's
All right.
engineered explosives. Is what it is.
All right, fair enough. Carry
Engineered
on.
explosives you can cast on one turn and crack on another turn, but it's limited by the number of colors you're playing. Punishment is just pay 2 mana, destroy all tokens, or pay 3 mana, destroy all 1-drops.
Sure.
It's good enough. I've had a lot of success with it. However, it happens to come stapled to this Orzhov card. And as we discussed earlier, I'm playing
Mirroring
Boss.
Oh my goodness.
So every once in a while, I have the option to cast Crime, and Crime is a 5 mana, 3 white-black sorcery.
Yeah.
Put target creature or, and this is the weird part, enchantment from an
Orzhov
opponent's
card.
graveyard, from exclusively an opponent's graveyard, into play under your control. So after you had dumped a bunch of cards into your graveyard and set yourself up to hurl like 500 damage at my face, I cast Crime and took the Leyline of Sanctity from your graveyard and gave myself Hexproof. Leyline of Sanctity is just an enchantment that says, you have Hexproof. And that was the day I believe that you realized that that deck had no way to win through Leyline of Sanctity.
Well, Serge had perhaps correctly evaluated that no one else was going to play that card. I mean, he was going to, but unlikely that someone else would be crazy enough to put this in their deck. Fortunately, you didn't have to.
Is there an acquire for enchantments? There's bribery, which gets creatures. Then there's
acquire
acquire
that gets artifacts. I
Acquire,
don't
which
think there
gets
is.
artifacts.
I would bet no, but
Honestly, all of my favorite powerful Magic stories with this deck involve winning with my opponent's cards. There was a
Fair.
game against Liam where I reanimated your Infect creatures.
Oh, yeah, my
and-
Putrefax.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was great.
Reanimated your Putrefax twice and poisoned you out.
this was another example of like you had won the game and you were just trying to find a way to end it. I will also point out that I was brand new to the format and this almost stopped me from coming ever again.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
It was
man.
not super fun.
Sorry.
No, that's
I just
okay.
picture Allison being like, "Why are you hitting yourself?"
I mean, the deck kind of unfortunately lends itself to showboating sometimes because you just have nothing else to do. You're like, I need to win somehow. I don't have any stuff.
No.
Look,
I
I'm
mean,
just
There
gonna
was a
take your
Runescar
stuff.
demon in your graveyard that the necromancy could have also
Yeah.
targeted.
I just like the idea like powerful nothing is very real sometimes in the big
Yeah,
decks. You know,
yeah.
you set yourself up. Eternal domination.
Unfortunately, this is the only one that lets you pull an enchantment out of your opponent's library, and it's also the only card you can cast for the rest of the game.
That's not a problem. We'll make it work.
All right,
All right.
there you go. Brew
We
it
are
up.
now workshopping Eternal Dominion deck. Well, Allison, thank you so much for being our first ever podcast guest. everyone on the show would acknowledge we talk about you and The Rock quite a bit.
More or less once a show.
Yeah.
So now at least they
Usually.
know who we're talking about.
Yeah, we can put a face and a name to the deck list.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. So let's go into our closing bit. Reminder that this podcast is brought to you by you with your support over the Patreon at patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. A reminder to check the deck lists down below, as well as the link to the Canadian Highlander video from the weekend. And thank you so much for watching. As always, really appreciate the support. We'll see you next time.